He sat on the cold pavement, his back against the worn wall of a building that had seen better days. The early morning wind bit at his hands and face, but he barely noticed. Years on the streets had taught him to ignore discomfort as much as possible. His clothes were torn and layered, a mix of whatever he could find in donation bins or on passers-by who dropped clothes they no longer wanted. He pulled a threadbare coat tighter around him, trying to ward off the chill that had nothing to do with the weather alone. He had been homeless for a long time, though he did not count the years in the usual way. Time on the streets was marked not by calendars but by seasons, by the faces that passed by the smell of the city at night, and by moments when life seemed to reach out with small gestures. Sometimes a warm coffee was offered by a kind stranger. Sometimes a dog would curl up near him and give a feeling of warmth that no blanket could provide. But more often it was a battle of invisibility. People ignored him, pretending he was part of the street itself. This invisibility was a skill he had mastered well. He had a small corner that he considered his own territory. It was near a busy intersection, where the noise of traffic drowned out most of the city's indifference. Here he could watch life continue without being entirely forgotten. From his spot he could see the suits rushing to their offices, the cars gliding past, and the occasional tourists stopping to take pictures, oblivious to the lives they brushed past. And in the midst of all this he practiced his secret talent. Music had always been a part of him, though the world had not made space for it. He had played the piano once long ago in a different life, when he had a home and a purpose that seemed stable. That world was gone, but the music had stayed with him. He found small ways to keep it alive, sometimes humming a tune to himself or tapping rhythms on metal pipes or discarded cans. Music was his private companion, a reminder that he still had a soul, even if society had decided he did not. Every morning, after scavenging for food or looking for small coins in the subway, he would sit quietly and draw imaginary keys in the air with his fingers. He imagined the music flowing from them, filling the streets with sound. To anyone watching, it would look like a man talking to the wind, but to him, it was a private concert. The notes were clear in his mind, pure and unbroken, and they gave him a small sense of hope that survived the harshness of each day. People on the streets had their own communities, their own unwritten rules. He had learned to navigate these carefully. There were some who would befriend him, sharing scraps of food or information about shelter availability. Others were less friendly, quick to steal or intimidate, making survival a careful dance. He had learned which allies were safe and which were not. Over time, he became known in certain circles, respected for his calm demeanor and quiet intelligence. Even in a place where respect was rare, he had carved out a small measure of it. One particular morning, the sun was barely rising, casting a soft orange light across the buildings. He pulled out a small, tattered notebook from the inside pocket of his coat. Inside, there were sketches and musical notes, fragments of melodies he had created over the years. To an outsider, it would look like the scrawls of a madman, but to him it was a lifeline. Each note and sketch represented a memory, a feeling, or a dream he refused to let die. He opened the notebook and traced a line of notes with his fingers, imagining them coming alive on an invisible piano in front of him. As he sat there, a group of businessmen walked past. Their suits were crisp, their shoes polished, and their conversations were loud, filled with laughter and confidence. One of them noticed him and smirked. They whispered to each other, pointing at him as if he were a joke meant to amuse them. The man heard their laughter, but he did not respond. He had learned that anger or words could not change the way the world saw him. He let them pass, their laughter lingering in the air like smoke that would eventually fade. Despite the mockery, he did not let it touch his spirit. Instead, he used it as fuel, a reminder of why he wanted to prove himself. The talent inside him was waiting for a moment like this, a moment when it could break through the walls of indifference and laughter. He had to be patient, but he knew that the world would not always be so blind. He had to create the opportunity, or it might never come. The day moved forward, slow and predictable in many ways. He found a small breakfast offered at a local shelter, chatting briefly with the volunteers. Their kindness was simple but significant. They did not ask for anything, and they treated him with the dignity that he rarely experienced elsewhere. After eating, he wandered through the city streets, observing life from the shadows. He watched children playing in a nearby park, couples walking hand in hand and shopkeepers arranging their displays. The world continued to turn, indifferent to the man on the corner. Yet he observed everything with a careful, attentive eye. He often imagined himself in different scenarios. Sometimes he pictured performing in a grand hall, the audience captivated by his music. Other times he saw himself helping others who were like him, showing them that talent and dignity could exist even in the harshest circumstances. These daydreams were his sanctuary, a private world where he was not invisible and laughter did not hurt. As evening approached, he returned to his corner, weary from the day, but not defeated. He pulled his notebook close and traced the lines of a melody he had been working on for weeks. His fingers moved across the air, pressing invisible keys, each note resonating in his mind. The city lights flickered on, casting long shadows on the pavement, but to him the music was real and comforting. In that moment he was not a homeless man. He was a musician, a creator, a person with a gift that the world had not yet acknowledged. Night fell, and the streets became quieter, though danger was never far. He found shelter in a nearby alley, carefully choosing a spot that offered some protection from the elements and other people. As he lay down, he thought about the day and the laughter that had greeted him that morning. He did not feel shame or anger. He felt determination. The world might mock him, but his talent was not something anyone could take away. One day it would speak for him. He closed his eyes, letting the imagined music fill his mind. Each note was a promise to himself, a vow that he would not give up. Despite the cold hunger and ridicule, he carried a warmth inside him that no one could touch. It was the warmth of his talent, of his dreams, and of the life he hoped to reclaim. And in the quiet of that night, as the city slept around him, he played his invisible piano, letting the world hear the music that lived within him, even if no one else could see it yet. The next morning began like most others. He woke up to the soft gray light of dawn, the city stretching and yawning around him. His body ached in ways that only came from sleeping on cold concrete, but he had grown used to it. He moved slowly, stretching his stiff limbs and adjusting his coat to block out the wind. Today felt different, though he could not name why. There was a quiet anticipation, a subtle tension that seemed to hum in the air. He sensed that something was about to change, something that could alter the rhythm of his days. He wandered through the streets, the smell of freshly baked bread and roasting coffee, mingling with the usual smells of the city. He watched people begin their routines, hurried footsteps, whispered phone conversations, laughter spilling from cafes. Everyone was absorbed in their own world, yet somehow connected by the hum of the city. He moved among them like a shadow, unnoticed but fully present, absorbing the sounds, sights, and energy. When he reached the park where children often played, he paused. He had always liked watching children, how easily they expressed joy and curiosity. Today, one little girl ran past him, giggling as she chased a ball, and her laughter made him smile. It reminded him that life could still hold moments of simple happiness, even in the hardest circumstances. He took out his notebook, flipping through the pages filled with sketches and musical notes, and traced a melody he had been crafting in his mind for days. It was a melody that spoke of hope and resilience, one he hoped would eventually reach ears that mattered. The homeless man had learned to be observant. He noticed a group of well-dressed men and women arriving at a nearby building. They were not ordinary passers-by. Their presence carried authority, confidence, and wealth. From the way they spoke and moved, he could tell they were influential, part of the world he had only ever glimpsed from the outside. Today, their arrival at this location signaled an event, a gathering that could change things in ways he could not yet imagine. His heart skipped a beat at the thought of what could happen if he had the chance to show his talent to people like this. He wandered closer, careful to remain unnoticed, listening to their conversations. They spoke of investments, business deals, and philanthropy, their voices confident and sure. They laughed easily, sometimes at things that seemed trivial or cruel, a laughter that reminded him of mornings when passers-by had mocked him on the streets. He clenched his fists slightly, not out of anger but determination. One day, he thought, they would hear him, and the laughter would turn into awe. The event had a garden area set up outside the building. Tables with white cloths and flower arrangements created a sense of elegance and formality. Musicians played soft background music, and waiters moved quickly, carrying trays of drinks. The homeless man found a discreet spot near a tree, where he could observe without drawing attention. He watched the interactions with a mixture of curiosity and longing, imagining what it would be like to be part of this world. But more importantly, he imagined what it would feel like to show them the music that had lived in his soul for years. He remembered the small piano he had once played in another life, the one that had filled rooms with warmth and emotion. It had been years since he had touched a real piano, but he knew that music could transcend any barrier. It could speak where words failed. He closed his eyes for a moment, picturing himself at the keys, each note precise and beautiful. In his mind, the crowd listened, captivated by the sound and the story it carried. The fantasy was comforting, yet he knew that turning it into reality would take courage and timing. As he watched the event unfold, he noticed the waiters moving with trays full of glasses, carefully avoiding collisions. The musicians played softly, almost invisible to the people they performed for. The conversation of the elite continued, punctuated by laughter and polite applause. Somewhere in the midst of this, he saw an opportunity. A small stage had been set up for performances, and he realized that if he could find a way to get there, even for a brief moment, he could share his talent with those who would otherwise never see him. He spent hours observing, learning the flow of the event, noting where the people gathered, and when the audience's attention might be momentarily distracted. Patience was crucial. He had survived on the streets for years by observing, calculating, and choosing the right moments to act. Now, the same patience and attention to detail could give him a chance to step into a world that had previously ignored him. The thought made his heart race, a mixture of fear and excitement that he had not felt in years. Eventually, the opportunity came unexpectedly. A musician on the small stage excused themselves briefly, leaving the keyboard unattended. The crowd barely noticed, engrossed in conversation and laughter. The homeless man approached slowly, each step measured and deliberate. He carried with him the confidence of someone who had nothing to lose and everything to share. As he reached the piano, he took a deep breath, feeling the smooth keys beneath his fingers as if they had been waiting for him all this time. He began to play softly at first, a melody delicate and gentle, barely noticeable over the chatter of the crowd, but gradually the music grew, filling the space with a sound so pure and emotive that it drew attention. People turned, puzzled at first, then captivated as the notes flowed effortlessly from his hands. His eyes closed and he let the music take over, every note a story of struggle, hope, and resilience. The laughter of earlier hours faded, replaced by a growing sense of wonder. Some of the guests whispered to each other, pointing at him with disbelief. How could a man who looked so weary and neglected play with such skill and passion? Others reached for their phones, capturing the moment, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. The music had a life of its own, carrying the emotions of a man who had been invisible for too long, speaking to everyone in a way words never could. He played for what felt like hours, though in reality it was only minutes. When the final note lingered in the air, silence followed. The crowd was still, as if holding its breath, processing the unexpected brilliance they had just experienced. Then slowly, applause began, hesitant at first, then growing into a wave of genuine admiration. The homeless man opened his eyes, feeling the warmth of recognition for the first time in years. He did not smile arrogantly. He simply nodded, acknowledging the moment and the connection he had made through his music. One of the organizers approached, eyes wide with amazement. The man explained who he was, his circumstances, and his years on the streets. There was a brief pause as everyone absorbed this information. The laughter and disbelief from before now seemed distant, replaced by a shared sense of awe and respect. People offered congratulations, some shaking his hand, others still in shock that someone they had overlooked could possess such talent. He stepped back from the piano, letting others return to the event while he remained a quiet observer. He had shown the world a glimpse of what he could do, and in that moment he felt a sense of pride and fulfillment that went beyond recognition or applause. It was the validation of years of practice, patience, and belief in himself, even when the world had turned away. As the night continued, he moved through the edges of the gathering, watching reactions and listening to conversations. Some of the billionaires whispered among themselves, clearly impressed and perhaps even humbled. Others spoke to the organizers about opportunities and ways to support him. The possibility of change, once distant and abstract, now felt tangible. He realized that one moment, one act of courage, could open doors that had seemed permanently closed. When the event finally ended, he returned to the streets, carrying with him a sense of hope that he had not felt in years. The night was quiet, the city lights reflecting on wet pavement from a light rain earlier. He walked slowly, feeling the cool air on his face, but there was a warmth inside him that no weather could diminish. The music he had played lingered in the memories of those who had listened, a reminder that talent, courage, and perseverance could break through even the most hardened barriers. As he settled into his usual spot for the night, he thought about the events of the day. The opportunity had come, and he had taken it. The world had laughed at him in the morning, but by evening it had listened. This small victory was more than just recognition. It was proof that he could still create change, that his life had meaning and value beyond what anyone else could define. He closed his eyes, imagining the notes of his next melody, ready to keep playing, to keep sharing, and to see where this new path might lead. The following morning, the city was alive with its usual chaos, but for the homeless man, everything felt different. The memory of the previous evening's music, of the surprised faces and whispered praises, lingered in his mind like a gentle echo. It was the first time in years that he felt visible, that his talent had touched others in a way that mattered. Yet he knew that recognition was fleeting, and that the world could be quick to forget. He had to build on this moment, to find a way to secure a place where his music could continue to shine. He walked the streets, his eyes scanning for familiar faces, both kind and indifferent. The city had not changed, but his perception had. Where before he had only seen obstacles, now he noticed possibilities. A small coffee shop owner waved at him from the sidewalk, having seen his performance from a distance the night before. It was a small gesture, but it reminded him that even the smallest acknowledgement could be a spark for bigger things. As he wandered, he replayed the previous night in his mind. Each note, each reaction from the crowd was etched vividly. He remembered the initial laughter, the subtle shifts in attention, and the way awe replaced disbelief. The experience had taught him that sometimes the world only responds to courage and persistence. He realized that stepping into spaces where he was least expected could lead to remarkable outcomes. He began to think strategically, planning how to present himself in ways that would command attention without relying on coincidence. Days passed as he observed more events and venues, learning the rhythm of the city and the movements of influential people. He noticed an upcoming charity gala, an event known for drawing some of the wealthiest and most powerful individuals. The thought of performing there filled him with both excitement and apprehension. It would be a challenge unlike any he had faced, but it also held the promise of a wider audience, a chance to be heard on a scale he had only dreamed of. He spent hours practicing, not on a real piano, but with his fingers tracing the invisible keys in his notebook and in the air. Each melody was honed, each rhythm perfected. He imagined the space of the gala, the bright lights, the formal attire, and the expectant faces. He rehearsed his entry, his gestures, and the way he would connect with the audience through the universal language of music. The preparation was meticulous. He knew that talent alone was not enough. Timing, presence, and confidence were equally important. On the day of the gala, he approached the venue cautiously. Security guards and attendants moved with precision, ensuring that only invited guests passed through. He lingered at the periphery, observing the flow and noting any opportunity to engage. Inside, the room was filled with the murmur of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the soft background music that set the tone for the evening. The atmosphere was elegant, almost intimidating, yet he felt a sense of determination he had not experienced in years. He watched the crowd, noticing individuals who carried themselves with authority and influence. Some laughed easily, their confidence bordering on arrogance, while others spoke in measured tones, careful with their words. He understood that these people were powerful, capable of shaping opportunities and potentially changing the course of his life if he could capture their attention. He waited, patient, knowing that his moment would come if he remained vigilant. The first opportunity appeared unexpectedly. A performer on the stage excused themselves briefly, leaving the grand piano unattended. The homeless man approached quietly, moving with the ease of someone who had learned to navigate invisible paths through the world. He placed his hands on the keys, feeling the smooth surface beneath his fingertips, and allowed the music to flow naturally. At first it was tentative, a soft melody that drew curious glances. Then, as he gained confidence, the music swelled, filling the room with an emotion so pure that conversation ceased. The crowd was initially taken aback. Their polite smiles faded, replaced by focused attention. The notes resonated with a power that transcended social barriers, speaking directly to the heart. He played with a combination of technical skill and raw emotion, each phrase telling a story of struggle, survival, and hope. The silence in the room was profound, broken only by the steady rhythmic flow of the music. People began to lean in, captivated by the unexpected brilliance before them. Some whispered to each other, questioning the identity of the man who had suddenly transformed the room with his talent. Others reached for their phones, capturing the moment, realizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary and rare. The performance became more than music. It was a statement, a proof that hidden talent could exist in the most overlooked places. The homeless man closed his eyes, lost in the music. He felt the presence of the audience without seeing individual faces, sensing their emotional connection through their attentiveness and the subtle shifts in energy around him. It was an experience both humbling and exhilarating. For a moment, he was no longer defined by his circumstances, but by the gift he had nurtured in secrecy for years. As the final notes lingered, the room erupted into applause. The sound was overwhelming, a mixture of astonishment and genuine appreciation. People rose to their feet, some with tears in their eyes, recognizing the depth of expression and skill they had just witnessed. The homeless man opened his eyes, taking in the scene with quiet satisfaction. He did not seek personal praise. The music itself was the reward. Yet he acknowledged the moment, knowing that he had crossed an invisible boundary, entering a world that had previously been closed to him. Organizers approached him, offering congratulations and assistance. They were curious about his background, astonished to learn of his journey and circumstances. The revelation sparked a mixture of empathy, admiration, and reflection among the audience. The initial laughter and doubt that had greeted him were now replaced with respect and a desire to support. Some influential guests discussed potential opportunities, eager to connect with someone whose talent was both undeniable and unexpected. He moved through the room with a calm demeanor, observing reactions and listening to conversations. The experience reinforced the lesson he had learned on the streets. The world often overlooks potential until it is undeniable. Courage and persistence could create openings that had seemed impossible. He felt a sense of empowerment, realizing that he could navigate these spaces and make his talent known without compromising his integrity. After the event, he returned to the streets, carrying with him the memory of the performance and the recognition it had garnered. The city felt different now, as if the possibilities had expanded. He walked with a sense of purpose, reflecting on the journey from invisibility to acknowledgement. Each step was a reminder that his talent, nurtured in secrecy and sustained through hardship, had the power to change perceptions and open doors. That night, as he settled into his usual corner, he allowed himself to dream of the future. The gala had been a turning point, a moment when his skill had forced the world to see him differently. He knew that opportunities would continue to arise, and he planned to seize them with patience and precision. The music that had once been confined to his imagination was now a bridge to new possibilities. He took out his notebook, tracing new melodies with his fingers, imagining them played on real instruments, in real halls in front of audiences eager to listen. Each note carried the weight of experience, the lessons learned from years of struggle, and the hope of a future where he would not be ignored. The city slept around him, but within him, a symphony of ambition, courage, and perseverance played on, a testament to the power of hidden talent and the resilience of the human spirit. The next morning, he awoke with the faintest ache of anticipation still lingering in his chest. The previous night had left a deep imprint on him, the applause and astonished faces replaying in his mind like a dream he was afraid to wake from. Yet he understood that yesterday's recognition was just a beginning. He could not rely solely on chance encounters. He needed to find a way to show his talent consistently and to the right people, those who could help him transform his life in meaningful ways. He walked through the city streets, the familiar sounds now seeming different. Car horns and chatter were no longer just background noise. They had a rhythm, almost like a part of his music. The city was alive, and he was becoming more alive in it. He paused at his usual corner, touching the tattered notebook that had been his companion for years. Every sketch, every note represented not just talent but perseverance. He traced the lines with his fingers, imagining them being performed in places he had only dreamed of. His mind was alive with possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, he truly felt like the world could belong to him as much as anyone else. He returned to the idea of reaching the people who could make a difference, the influential individuals who had been in the audience the night before. He recalled the expressions on their faces, the astonishment that had replaced laughter. It occurred to him that many had never witnessed a talent like his in such a setting, and this could be his chance to break free from the streets permanently. But he also knew that attention could fade quickly. He needed a plan, a way to present himself that would leave a lasting impression, not just a fleeting moment of surprise. He began by observing places where such influential people would gather: charity events, music halls, galleries, and upscale restaurants. Each location had its rhythm, its patterns, and he studied them carefully. Timing, he knew, was everything. Entering at the wrong moment could mean being ignored or dismissed, but a well-chosen opportunity could change everything. He practiced walking with confidence, carrying himself as though he belonged, even though every step was still on the edge of uncertainty. He also refined his music. His notebook became more than just sketches. It became a roadmap. He created pieces that could capture attention immediately, melodies that told stories without words. Some were gentle and emotional, others bold and commanding. He imagined how each would resonate in different rooms with different audiences. The more he practiced, the more he realized that his talent was not just in the notes, but in the way he could communicate through them, connecting deeply with anyone willing to listen. One evening, he spotted a charity gala being set up in a grand hall downtown. The decorations were elaborate, with chandeliers casting warm light, tables adorned with elegant arrangements, and musicians rehearsing in the background. The crowd was diverse, from wealthy patrons to media personalities, all mingling with ease and sophistication. He lingered outside, carefully watching the comings and goings, studying security patterns and noting the best moment to make an entrance. When the gala officially began, he waited patiently near the back, blending with the shadows. The music playing in the background was soft, not challenging for someone with his skill to complement or surpass. He saw opportunities for short, impressive performances, ways to capture attention without being intrusive. It required courage, and he took a deep breath, steadying his heart, remembering the exhilaration of the last performance. As a brief interlude occurred, one musician stepping away from their instrument, he stepped forward, hands trembling slightly but guided by years of practice. The first notes were cautious, delicate, almost as if testing the waters. But the melody quickly grew in confidence and complexity, drawing eyes and attention. Conversations halted, forks and glasses paused mid-air, and slowly the room became aware of the extraordinary music emerging from the man they had barely noticed before. People began to move closer, curious and increasingly captivated. Whispers spread, some questioning who this man was, others marveling at the skill and emotion conveyed through the notes. Every keystroke told a story of survival, struggle, and hope. The room transformed from polite formality into an engaged audience feeling the music in their hearts. The homeless man played with a combination of precision and raw emotion, each note resonating as though it carried the weight of his years on the streets. The initial disbelief in the room gradually shifted to admiration and awe. People who had previously laughed at his presence now listened intently, moved by the power of his talent. Some reached for their phones, capturing the moment, sharing it quickly with the world outside. The music seemed to transcend the barriers of wealth, status, and preconceptions, speaking directly to human emotion. He did not play for recognition. He played because it was a part of him, a language he had nurtured in secret for years. The performance continued, drawing more people in. Security glanced around, confused at first, but no one moved to stop him. The organizers, initially unaware of his presence, approached cautiously. As they observed the crowd's reaction, they realized that this was no ordinary street performer. This was a rare talent that demanded respect. The applause, which began quietly, grew louder, filling the hall and reaching even the furthest corners. For the homeless man, it was a moment of connection, a bridge between his hidden world and one that had previously seemed impenetrable. After the final note lingered in the air, a hushed silence enveloped the room, followed by sustained applause and cheers. The room erupted in astonishment, not just at the skill, but at the story it conveyed. People whispered among themselves, some approaching organizers expressing a desire to meet him and explore ways to support his journey. The applause was genuine, heartfelt, a recognition of talent long overlooked. The man stepped back from the piano, allowing the energy of the audience to settle while he maintained his humble composure. He did not boast or seek attention. The music had spoken for him. The acknowledgement from the crowd was profound, but more importantly, it validated the years of persistence, practice, and hope that had carried him through his life on the streets. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of talent. As the gala continued, he observed the conversations among the influential attendees. Some reflected on their initial assumptions, recognizing the error in dismissing someone based solely on appearance. Others discussed opportunities to support him, from mentorship to potential collaborations. The recognition was not just fleeting. It had the potential to open doors and reshape perceptions. The homeless man realized that his life could change dramatically, not just through luck but through skill, courage, and timing. After the event, he returned to his usual corner in the city, carrying with him the memory of the performance and the acknowledgement it had received. The streets, once harsh and unforgiving, now seemed filled with possibilities. He walked with a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that each step could lead to further opportunities. His music, once confined to imagination and secrecy, was now a tool of transformation, capable of bridging the gap between his world and the one he had long admired from afar. That night, as he lay under the familiar stars, he allowed himself to dream beyond survival. He imagined halls filled with audiences eager to listen, collaborations that would challenge and inspire him, and a future where his talent could help others as well as himself. The city slept around him, but he was awake in a new way, conscious of the paths before him and determined to continue playing, growing, and sharing his gift. The recognition he had received was only the beginning, and he felt ready to embrace the journey ahead, knowing that every note he played could open new doors and touch lives in ways he had only just begun to imagine. The days after the gala were filled with a mixture of excitement and reflection. The homeless man wandered through the city streets with a quiet confidence that he had never known. Though he was still living in the shadows of the sidewalks and alleyways, his mind was no longer constrained by survival alone. For the first time, he felt that his life had a direction, and that the music he carried within him could be a bridge to a future he had once thought impossible. He began receiving invitations from people who had witnessed his performance. Some were for small gatherings where his talent could shine again. Others were for opportunities that hinted at long-term changes. Each invitation was a challenge, an opportunity to continue proving himself, and he approached them with both humility and determination. He knew that the world had been quick to dismiss him in the past, and he did not want to rely solely on luck. He needed to continue demonstrating the depth and sincerity of his talent. The first invitation he accepted was for a private concert at a local cultural center. The audience was intimate, composed of people who appreciated music and understood its power. As he set his fingers on the piano keys, he felt a familiar surge of energy, a connection between himself and the people who had come to listen. This time there was no doubt, no initial laughter, only attention and anticipation. Each note he played seemed to resonate deeper, drawing the listeners into a world that only his music could create. Word of his performances spread quickly, and soon more influential individuals sought to meet him. They were drawn not only by his skill but also by his story, the contrast between his past struggles and the brilliance of his talent. Interviews were requested, invitations extended, and offers made. He listened carefully, considering each opportunity, knowing that the right choice could transform his life while preserving the integrity of his art. He had learned to trust his instincts, and he made decisions based on where he could grow and contribute meaningfully. One day, a prominent music academy reached out, offering him a chance to perform in front of a larger audience and to collaborate with accomplished musicians. The offer was unprecedented for someone in his circumstances. He felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. This was a world he had observed from a distance, and now he was being invited to participate in it fully. He accepted, understanding that each performance was not just an opportunity to play, but a chance to inspire others who might also feel overlooked or forgotten. As he prepared for the academy performance, He reflected on his journey. The years on the streets had been difficult, but they had also taught him resilience, patience, and observation. Each struggle, each moment of invisibility, had contributed to the depth and emotion in his music. He realized that his experiences, though painful, had given him a unique perspective that could touch people in ways that purely technical skill could not. His music was infused with life itself, with triumphs and defeats, hope and despair, all interwoven in melodies that were impossible to ignore. The night of the performance at the Academy arrived. The hall was large, filled with an audience that included students, teachers, patrons of the arts, and music enthusiasts. He approached the grand piano with a calm determination. The stage lights illuminated the keys in his hands as he began to play. The first notes were soft, delicate, drawing the audience in, and then gradually the music grew in richness and intensity. The emotion was palpable, and the listeners felt it in their hearts. Some moved to tears, others simply captivated by the beauty and depth of the performance. After the performance, the applause was thunderous, the kind that resonated through the hall and into the soul. People stood, cheering and clapping, some leaning forward to get a better look at the man who had transformed their evening into an unforgettable experience. Offers and congratulations poured in, and he received messages from individuals who wanted to mentor him, collaborate, and ensure that his talent reached its full potential. Each opportunity was carefully considered, with the guidance of his own instincts and a small circle of trusted friends who had emerged from his previous encounters. With each success, he began to make changes in his life. Slowly, he transitioned from the streets into temporary housing offered by one of the patrons who believed in him. Though he kept his humility and never forgot his past, the stability of a safe space allowed him to focus entirely on his music and on sharing it with the world. He used his experiences to compose pieces that told stories of struggle, perseverance, and hope, resonating with audiences in ways that transcended words. As months passed, he became a symbol of resilience and hidden talent. Media outlets shared his story, highlighting not only his skill but also the journey he had undertaken from homelessness to recognition. He appeared on stages that he had once only dreamed of, collaborated with musicians who had inspired him from afar, and began teaching small workshops for underprivileged youth, sharing his knowledge and passion for music. The impact of his journey extended beyond himself, touching others who saw in him proof that talent and determination could overcome even the harshest circumstances. He continued to play in a variety of venues, from intimate gatherings to larger performances, always carrying the same authenticity and emotion. The audiences never failed to notice that his music was more than skill. It was a reflection of a life lived fully, with all its trials and triumphs. People who had once laughed at him now sought his advice, his mentorship, and his perspective. He remained humble, knowing that his talent was a gift meant to be shared, not a tool for ego or pride. Through it all, he never forgot the streets, the corners where he had slept, the alleys where he had observed life passing by. He often returned to these places not out of nostalgia, but to remind himself of the journey, the struggles that had shaped him, and the importance of giving back. He began programs to help others in similar situations, offering lessons in music, opportunities for exposure, and guidance on how to navigate the challenges of life with dignity and hope. His story became a beacon of inspiration, showing that society's labels did not define one's worth. Years passed, and he became a respected figure in the music world. Yet despite the fame and recognition, he remained grounded. He continued to play from the heart, focusing on the emotional power of music rather than the applause it generated. He was invited to perform internationally, share his story on platforms that reached millions, and collaborate with renowned artists, but he never lost sight of the essence of his journey, the discovery of his own worth and the belief that hidden talent could transform lives, both for the performer and the audience. One evening, after a performance in a large concert hall, he walked back through the quiet streets of the city. The lights reflected softly on the wet pavement, and he felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. He paused near the corner where he had once sat alone, playing imaginary notes on invisible keys. The memories of hardship and invisibility were still there, but now they were accompanied by triumph, hope, and purpose. He smiled quietly to himself, knowing that his journey had come full circle, not just in recognition, but in the understanding that his life, his talent, and his resilience could inspire others to believe in themselves. He continued to compose, perform, and teach, leaving a legacy that extended far beyond any one concert or accolade. His story reminded everyone who heard it that talent could emerge from the most unexpected places, that courage and persistence could break barriers, and that the human spirit could shine even when the world seemed blind to it. And every time he played, whether in a grand hall or a small community center, he carried with him the journey of a life that had once been overlooked, transforming every note into a testament of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary power of the human soul.